quorum. Dr. Battle, I will just go ahead and kick it over to you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Tyler. We're going to provide an update to the board during this committee meeting regarding our priorities for space use. And the title of this update is around our MNPS Community-Based Support Services Plan, keeping our students and our families and community that we serve at the heart of the recommendations that you'll hear this evening. So I would like to welcome up our Chief Operations Officer, Moore Sullivan, and team to lead us through this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Battle. Hello again, Maura Sullivan, Chief of Operations. Glad to be with you. So we have several school buildings that we've been looking at right now to see how we can best utilize their space through our Reimagine process. We have looked at ways that we can integrate and distribute our support hub work. And we've been looking at just ways that we can really take the support hub as to the communities throughout neighborhoods, and we're also pretty crowded here too. So we're just really looking at different ways that we can provide support throughout the district and different areas. And so that's what you'll see throughout this. We're specifically speaking today about 8 buildings. There's lots of cool things that we're doing in all of our buildings to distribute and integrate our supportive functions throughout the district, but we want to focus on these 8 with you today. And make sure that I can do this. There we go. So the 8 that we'll be looking at are Buena Vista, Gra-Mar, Joelton Middle, Old Brick Church Middle, Robert Lillard, and Stokes Middle, the Cone School, and the Old Bellevue Library and Fire Station, a little building that's been used for both at different times.
Oh, no, they're 2 separate buildings.
Well, yes. All right. So some of the things that we looked at when we were trying to figure out the best ways to distribute our supportive services, Dr. Battle gave us the charge to think with these priorities as our North Star, if you will, for how we will get our support hub further integrated into the neighborhoods, looking for digital future design space, looking for places that we can have additional MNPS employee health centers, places that we can have child care centers for our employees, just really great supportive functions that we can put throughout the communities and where we could find space for them. So one of the great features that we have already, a great success that we've already started is at Buena Vista Elementary School. We have our homeless hero team, that homeless support services hero team. And that team, as you can imagine, has, we've had the ability to grow that team people-wise, and with additional dollars, we've been able to get more partners, et cetera. And so we were looking for space so that they would have a place to work, and the Buena Vista Elementary School was a great place that we could house the team all in one place as they grew, and and it didn't require additional renovation. It was turnkey, and we've been able to put people in, and they have really, really enjoyed and thrived being in one place together as opposed to being separated and working kind of on top of each other for a while. And so we're really excited about being able to put that hero team together at Buena Vista. So that's the type of work, it puts those community support services out in the neighborhood, out in the community, and also allows for space for these employees. other things that we could do at Buena Vista, you can see we have a floor plan where we've been imagining through our reimagine process, imagining other things that we could do there, including having a test and teaching kitchen for our nutrition services folks, and having some additional space for IT and a curriculum library for our special ed department, as well as some professional development and community use space, and support services offices and special ed offices. So those are some ideas that we're looking at as we look at ways to utilize this building completely. And Gra-Mar Middle School is another building that we've been thinking about what we can do with. Right now, Gra-Mar is the little engine that could. It's been helping us out when we need it. And unfortunately, we've needed it. We had, when the tornado hit, Gra-Mar became a temporary home for another school building, and now it's a temporary home for another school building while it's going in renovation and rebuild. So that's fantastic, and it's a wonderful thing to have that, have a space that's your own and it's free when you need it. You hope that you don't need those things, but it's also, we also just desperately need additional community supports and additional employee supports. And so when it's not being utilized still for a swing space for school construction, we are thinking about a whole employee wellness center complex, similar to the complex that we have across the parking lot. And we would have, so this would be a second employee wellness center. And we would also have, very, very exciting piece of this is that we would also have an early childhood development center for our employees' kids. So we're very excited about this idea. It's these are all ideas that we're playing with, and I know these drawings look like they're all fleshed out, and it's just because we have a great team we have architects on staff who can do that. So these are all preliminary and just ideas that we're floating out there along with our Reimagine project. Joelton Middle School is another building that right now we are looking for imagination for. We've had some ideas around community use and rental. We've also had an idea that it could be a flex space for relocation of Joelton Elementary School possibly. So that one is still sort of in the planning processes, but it's just wanted y'all aware that it's on our radar. Old Brick Church Middle School. This building, unfortunately, is beyond our reimagination. It is at a place where the school building is just not. It doesn't make financial sense for us to do the type of renovation that we'd need to do to be able to reutilize it. So we are recommending at some point to you all to surplus the property. Lillard is another very exciting opportunity for us. We have talked about renovating this space and utilizing it as a Community Achieves support hub. So we would take our Community Achieves work and really create, like we talked about with that HERO program, just really create a one-stop shop and a support hub in the community at the Lillard building. And we would also like to have a design space for our digital future concepts. So another exciting idea that we're looking at and what it could look like. You'll see a design center space on the left-hand side in the orange. Then we've thought about a clinic, a small clinic, not a full-fledged wellness center, but a small clinic for employees. And as well as another one of these early childhood development centers. Trying to get daycare for employees as many places, hub and spoke around the district so that our employees have a place to take their kiddos. And, sorry, I was thinking there was another page to that one. And then Stokes Middle School. It's a building that's on Belmont Boulevard. It also has fallen into disrepair that is unfortunately such that it's not going to be financially beneficial to repair. So our recommendation is to demolish that building. The Cone School has great programs in it now. We have lots and lots of community support programs there, and we recommend continuing that and just building on what we are already doing there, including adding on to our MNPS virtual school, and also having another spot for another digital future design center. So that's, you've got a lot of things that you already see there. We're using pre-K, space for a pre-K department and special ed and virtual school now, and lots of the homework hotline and adult literacy. And so just, continuing to use it for those uses and expanding those uses. And then our last but not least is the old Bellevue Library and Fire Station building. We are recommending to surplus that property. Just the way that it is set up, and it's just not good for any of our current uses, and so we are recommending to surplus that property, and would be bringing that to you at a later date. But none of this is for board action at this time. This is all just preliminary, but we've heard the charge from Dr. Battle, we've heard the charge from this board and from the community and our employees that we want more services closer to the neighborhoods. And so that is what we're trying to do, is to really invigorate our support hub, bring it where it needs to be, and distribute the uses throughout our district. So those are some preliminary ideas just to give you the full transparency of what we're looking at, and love to hear your feedback with Dr. Battle, and that's where we are.
All right, thank you, Chief Sullivan. Board Member Tyler, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Really quick question. Can you tell us what surplus means?
Surplus means that the board would decide that it is no longer a property that is educationally viable for our use, and then it would go through, so you would surplus it, meaning that it's no longer ours. Then it would go to the city council for the process that they have as well for surplusing. The city could decide that they want to do something with it themselves, or they could then surplus it to the city council. The city council would declare it surplus, and then it would go out for bid through governmental bidding processes.
Thank you.
So it's sort of like sale, but we can't just sell it as a government building. So,
Is the Stokes, I understand that it's recommended to be demolished. Is it also recommended to surplus or just demolish?
just demolish the building and retain that property, and we're still looking at different uses in that area.
Okay. Got it.
So in the event that properties are surplused, that revenue trickles back to MNPS?
Yes, ma'am. If it is sold, but if the city uses it for their own use, they can either give us fair market value for the property, or we could enter into some sort of lease arrangement through an MOU.
Thank you.
Chris, is there anything else you want to add to the process financially, given how that might flow?
Yeah, thank you. And there was a change a few years ago that the City Council, Metro Council made, where any sale of any property would either go toward paying down our debt or go toward purchasing additional property. And so they've put some guardrails. It can't just be spent on anything.
Thank you.
And so just quickly on the question of things that, what I heard you say, I think, is that anything that would come for a vote is the surplus questions, but the other questions are things that you all deal with from a staff perspective. Is that the right way to think about it?
Unless there are funding issues that would go through our capital needs budgeting.
Okay, great. I
have a question about the use of some of the facilities. I really like seeing that there's some childcare being offered. Is that only going to be available to MNPS employees, or could MNPS students use that if they end up needing that?
It's a good idea. Dr. Battle?
Yeah, so we've had that question before. Right now, when we're looking at capacity, it is potentially the prioritization right now for staff. And then as we look to leverage other spaces, we can continue to build out. One of the things in that same realm we have been thinking about is our teaching as a profession, early childhood programs, and how those spaces could also be leveraged as practicum space, observation space, as we develop our own teachers and educators here in the district. So I think the access for students would kind of be the second priority as we're building out space, kind of getting things settled in for staff benefit, but definitely also leveraging the teaching space for early childhood.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Elrod?
I personally would like for us to first offer those to our employees and staff as a retention and recruitment model. But I do think it's helpful to have some potential additional seats as we continue to grow or consider it for students. I would like for us to not be the employer of said daycare, though I think it's an incredible offer and something that we should absolutely do, and it's very exciting to me. I would encourage us when we get to that point, which I would hope is sooner than later, that we find, of course, a good partner for that instead, and that's not something that we take on as a board and as a school system. But I do think it's a great offer for us as a retention and recruitment strategy, as we know as a city that there's just way too little daycare seats, and that would be a vital piece to it.
Dr. Nabama-Kinney?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm excited about the thought of having early childhood and daycare opportunities for our faculty, for our staff in the community. We do have a shortage across our community, so childcare is a great need, and just the thought of that innovative practice in implementing those is something that's really needed in our community, and I think will also be a great marketing strategy for current, new, and upcoming teachers and staff.
Just echoing what Ms. Tyler brought up about the childcare for students. I know we've talked about that on and off, and the fact that Gra-Mar in particular is so close to Maplewood High School, and that there are some walking trails as a part of the redevelopment going on in that area. This is something that Councilmember Nancy Van Rees has championed, and the Gra-Mar Neighborhood Association is very excited about it as well, as a possibility for, a collaboration between those two facilities. And then I also want to echo what Ms. Elrod said about us outsourcing the providing the daycare services. There's so many wonderful nonprofit secular daycare programs in Nashville. I think we could definitely find a fantastic partner for that. But I would like us to look a little more closely at the possibility of offering that for students.
Yeah, well, as we're looking, so a few years back, we did survey our teachers, and we've gotten some data, and we have a fabulous planning committee who looks at projections and birth rates, and so as we're looking at that, it is going to be very tight as we're talking about one location, potentially two locations, and so we are trying to prioritize in phases access to that as we continue to expand. And so I just want to set a realistic expectation around, and we also know in early childhood programs the ratios are very low, and so we just need to be mindful of that as we're expanding, knowing that our ultimate goal, our ideal space will be to provide childcare for everyone, but just realistically what we're already seeing in numbers and birth rates and enrollment, it will take us some time to build to that level. And as we're also thinking about expanding and I'm looking at my planning team, the specs around building out an early childhood program are very intense. And so they can be costly if we're not very mindful.
Especially if it's not already set up that way.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I'd like to think about, the collaboration that Peabody University or school, college, it used to be by itself, had with the university school. And I think that's a really great model that we could hopefully learn something from if that's the direction that we choose to go. Okay, Ms. Block, did you have something?
Dr. Battle just mentioned a survey that had been utilized as part of the planning process. I was actually just curious, being new, to learn a little bit more about what kind of data and information you all look at when you're figuring out what you might potentially place in different places, just to know which kinds of things in which places. And then I'm kind of just curious as well in thinking about both of the buildings that are in my district so that I can help folks understand why certain things might be put certain places.
Well, a lot of what we look at, we do a facilities condition index, first of all, to give us a baseline piece of data as to how many people, how many programs, how many kids, how many teachers, et cetera, we can fit into each building. And we're right now redoing our facilities condition index. We have a consultant on board who is helping us do that survey work and working with our facilities team to ensure that we're counting all of our spaces correctly and then seeing how we can best utilize our space. We use the principal's input. We look at all of our different, our programming work that we want to do, this type of, these priorities for space use, this list that we have here are the kinds of things that we look at for additional programming as well that we want to be able to put in place throughout our district. But for each individual building, we're going to look at that, we're going to take that facilities condition index. We're going to look at each individual room, each individual space, what our requirements are from the state for that type of program. We're going to look at our enrollment projections, and that'll let us know what our life of that building is, so to speak, and how much, how we can utilize that building, how we can flex it, what other programs we can put in, et cetera.
Yeah, and I want to.
Thank you, super helpful.
Yeah, and if I could take a moment just to acknowledge our facilities team, our planning team, Mars operations team. Chris, it seems like they work very well together, and our experts in this area, so I appreciate all the time because this has been a large project for them to learn every space across the district. They can tell you where everything is in every building across the district, but I just wanted to acknowledge their hard work, their expertise, and their innovation around meeting what we've heard and receiving feedback and needs across the district to the spaces we have available so we can maximize them. So thank you, team, for your efforts and your leadership.
Yes, definitely. And just also to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, we have that facilities index score that helps us decide which schools need what in what order. And there's a lot of things that go into that, and I think it's really important to point out that we every 5 years, is that right? We reassess to make sure that we are keeping in mind the most up-to-date, the most current things, and we do contract outside so that it doesn't have any impropriety, any impact of looking like we're picking favorites or anything, that it is a completely impartial process to make sure that our schools are truly being seen in the order that the need is the highest. And I think that's really important to point out because sometimes there's a little bit of grumbling around other issues. And so it's really important that we know that we are being as impartial and as fair as we absolutely can to make sure that our schools who have needs, because every single school has needs, that we are meeting them as quickly as we can, and we're triaging them in a way that gets the ones that need the most help, get the most help as soon as possible.
That's right, and Ms. Tyler, if I can add to that, in every school, instructional space is a part of that list.
Yes.
So everyone is somewhere with regards to that facility index, that need and timing.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Elrod, did you have something you wanted to have? Go for it.
This is my last question, I promise. When we go through phases on how to, I guess, attack each building, are we doing it building an area based by phases, or the phases considered by department? Because there's some overlap. There's some that have daycares, there's some that don't, there are some that have the digital space, there's some that don't. Are we doing all the digital spaces at one time and that's the phase, or is the phase considered a building or an area?
Well, I think the best example to answer that question is we have some facilities where there's very little in renovation or design that we can move on pretty immediately. There are others, like take Gra-Mar, for example, that's currently being utilized as a swing space for Goodlettsville Elementary. We will have to hold on moving and transforming that space until after the new Goodlettsville Elementary School is built and the school is relocated back into that new space. So that is probably the furthest out, and I'm looking to my team to confirm as far as that transformation. So there are a few that some major but minor touches we need to put on those buildings to get them moving, and others that will be longer term. And you could imagine the Gra-Mar space in particular will take the longest, as well as the components around the early childhood centers and the wellness centers taking some time. Right before that, the digital future space will take some time to design and to implement, but there are other areas that we can start moving on pretty swiftly.
I'm glad to hear that we're not waiting to do all of it before we do any of it. And so, okay.
Do now, build towards.
And a great example of that, again, is with the work that we've done at Buena Vista. I mean, it's just we took what we had available and we just started moving folks in and made it work. So that's the kind of thing that we're going to keep doing.
And I think that it's important to point out that a lot of what we do in our schools is more than just for school-age students. Like the Cone School, for example, serves so many different populations, and from adult literacy all the way down. So and there's a lot of really great things happening in our buildings across the district. All right, does anybody have any other questions or thoughts?
Thank you, Chief Sullivan.
Thank you very much.
The only other thing I want to say is with James Lawson coming due, so excited. Opening up in the fall, I know that Hillwood will soon be on that property list of things we need to discuss, and we have been having community meetings about that for a long time. We have a lot of very strong thoughts on that, and just kind of keeping it on our radar that is something that the community is anxious to know what's going to happen.
Yes.
So you're aware.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, well, there being no further business, I'll adjourn us.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.